Hi, this is Michael Bigham. I wanted to make this other video like I told you guys I would. This is regarding the transmitters in the brain and what they actually control in the brain. Consciousness is actually one of those things. Consciousness comes from the ability for the brain to regulate the levels of energy from the neurons that travel along the fiber structure of the brain. So, energy level distribution is very important to keep the mind conscious, to keep you in a state of homeostasis. What happens to the brain by suppressing these transmitters with chemicals like mental health medications is it slows those energy levels down or it speeds them up, confusing the transmitters. The transmitters in the brain are meant to control your emotions, for you to basically decide from what you believe as far as information coming in from your environment, auditory, visual, touch, taste, smell. All those senses, those natural senses, are your sensory functioning. And the transmitters control your sensory functioning. So, if you suppress the brain with these chemicals, you suppress consciousness, meaning that you become slowed down. Your transmitters, the neurons in your brain, they can't respond to the energy level that is being transmitted along your fiber structure of your brain. It's basically the fibers in your brain. It's a line of tissue that goes from the back of your brain to the front of your brain. So one of those things I wanted to talk to you guys about was the fact that as those neurons travel along the fibers and distribute energy levels, which those neurons are your thoughts produced, when you actually have a thought or consciously have a thought, or maybe it's a spiritual thought that you're having that comes to you. But what happens is those neurons travel to the front of your brain, and then it's transmitted as you make a decision on how you want to apply that thought, or even if you want to actually listen to and acknowledge that thought. That's all focused on the front of your frontal lobe. So as that thought is transmitted to the front of your brain, it's also transmitted to your amygdala. Your amygdala then allows the response through your nervous system to allow you to either have movement in your body, which is all focused on being able to move, your legs moving, your arms moving. It's what allows your body to feel anxiety or worry or fear, or even a spark of a feeling of positivity, which would be confidence in yourself, a sense of motivation, a sense of drive. That's all regulated by the amygdala and the transmitters on the basis of the frontal lobe that allow that amygdala to allow you to give a response. But it first comes from you being able to acknowledge a decision and then be able to act on that decision. So, I explained to you guys in my previous video that a person naturally has the ability to make a conscious decision based on being able to comprehend the difference between wrong and right. They're able to consciously come to the conclusion, should I make this decision? These are the consequences of my actions. Should I make this decision? These are the consequences of my actions, both positive and negative. We all have an ability to make a determination and a decision, what we do with our lives, how we make choices consciously by a positive and a negative thought. But when you suppress brain function, you prevent the positive thought from being able to enter the mind consciously. When you suppress the transmitters, What's happening is that you're stuck in a conscious state of mind emotionally. So you can't come to the thought of knowledge that would give you an alternate response. You can't do that. You can't come to that because you can't decide on an alternate response if you don't know that alternate response. You're stuck in emotional thinking. The control controls the emotion, but it suppresses the emotion to the point where you have no ability to choose an alternate option. So I want to basically get into the conscious state of mind. Okay. This is the natural ability that everyone has. Natural cognitive abilities in the way the brain should function. No impairment. And these are all interconnected with each other. Consciousness, awareness, sleep, alertness, responsiveness, decision-making, motivation, desire, confidence, intended interest, focus, attention, detail, or organization, patterns and cognitive comparison, problem solving, orientation, meanings of truth and false, belief, perspectives, regulating functional processes. So your brain regulates all these. These are functional processes that consciousness has. So basically what I'm saying is that where consciousness comes from is the energy level distribution of the brain. The neurons that travel along the fibers of your brain. That is where consciousness comes from. So as it transmits along the fibers, like I said before, it now can be understood and comprehended as a willful decision to make what's right or wrong, and then it's transmitted down into the amygdala so that it can process, and then it can be transmitted through the body so that you can respond physically. So, this is the issue that I've had with previous medications. And I want you guys to be aware of this because you are affected in this way. A lot of these things are being taken from you and you don't realize it. A lot of it is because you're spellbound and because the drugs themselves actually make you think that they're being a benefit to you because your emotions suppressed. You're no longer feeling anxiety, depression, all these different things. But there's natural ways to overcome your depression by having the acknowledgement and understanding to know knowledge, to understand knowledge. If you know the opposite of what you're feeling, you can overcome that emotion. You can overcome the depression. You can overcome the anxiety simply by knowing the opposite of what you're thinking. So that's where the mind can twist the person's decision making. Because if you don't acknowledge the positive, you can't get out of the negative. So this is it. The unnatural outcome of drug suppression, affecting or the effects of depriving the transmitters, fuses. Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're depriving you of all these natural abilities. Unconsciousness, on and off. Lack of awareness, insomnia, sleep. Lack in environmental ability to be alert. Unresponsive, unable to question motives of others, self. Confused in which choice to make, wrong or right decisions. The willingness to respond, act, pursue interests, long for, hope for, believe for, and trust for are impaired. Your ability for desire to act, respond, pursue interests, long to achieve, and actually achieve, believe for, trust for, and have confidence and ability for are impaired. Confidence in self, others to trust inability, remain impaired, confused. Interests are impaired. No focus on desire for or belief of outcome of goals, intention for meeting goals, longing for or acknowledgement to respond for, intended meeting of one's goals. And those are all related to each other. Focus regulation impaired. Suppressed desire to get on and off track, lack of environmental awareness of information that would allow one to keep focus or alter the direction of a conversation in their favor or someone else's. Empathy of others, more intense interest for focus to remain on self, lack of acceptance of others' choices, are impaired, resulting in frustration, agitation, because of a confused regulatory process. Attention impaired, loss of desire to focus on others' interests. Mental or visual detail impaired, cannot focus on detail, comparison of detail, organizing detailed information, or comprehending simple or complexity of orientation, meanings of words, numbers, or patterns in visual or mental or auditory comparison, and that's including touch and taste and smell. Organization, visual expression impaired, lack of control of how words are or should be used in comparing information to other information. Chemical change in what was first thought or meant to be said. A change to what you intend to say. Forced change in word organization or thought structure. Those are things that people have a hard time on these medications doing because of the suppression, because of the paralyzing the brain. Patterns of information impaired, struggles to compare lines with circles, lack in ability to differentiate created shapes, hands-on or sequential organization, or even a creative benefit to out-of-the-box thought of detail. These are all impaired. Problem-solving impaired, inability to find solutions to simple complexity of hard problems, desire to focus on the issues but not the solutions. Orientation impaired, lack of recognizing a position of self-abilities, or how others' abilities can enhance or benefit you in learning or being aware of your own. Meanings of truth and false, hard time with acknowledging who to trust, too trustworthy of everyone, not cautious of others, hard time with determining what information to believe and not to believe. Beliefs changed, perspective changed, organization of love and its meaning in all aspects of who you are impaired, a change from selflessness to selfishness. Last page. Regulation, regulatory information. This is the conscious states that you become in. You become twisted and altered from homeostasis to heterostasis. But this is the change that it makes. Change in conscious states on and off, or deprivation in a mental capacity to remain conscious. So you switch from homeostasis, which keeps you conscious long term, but then you switch to heterostasis, which the brain begins to not know how to keep you conscious. Should I remain off? Should I remain on? Now I'm dependent upon this alteration. I have to take these drugs to keep me conscious, because if I don't, I withdraw from the medications over a period of time. The brain now is not dependent on it anymore, so it's even more confused with how to keep you conscious, and it doesn't know whether or not to shut it off or keep it on. Why? Because the chemicals are just like the fuses in a television. Once your television gets really old to the point where it stops working, the fuses wear out. So the television has to keep you conscious or has to not keep you conscious. It gets confused. So your brain is just like the television. It shuts off so it does not overheat the brain and kill you. You go in and out of consciousness. And this happens on a consistent basis. So now you're dependent upon that alteration. So what do you actually do about it? You have to take something now so you remain conscious. It's a pharmaceutical company thing. They know this is happening, so they know there's no way around you guys being able not to get off your medication. You have to have something now. And that's because for so many years your brain's been adjusted to this alteration. So now they don't know what to do about it. They don't know what to do. But this is my conclusion. These are all regulated by the neurotransmitters, fuses in the brain. When you suppress these transmitters, you prevent or lose these natural abilities by not allowing the mind to acquire a response from the individual's environment. This is evident by how the responses are given by the individual. They will display a repetitive expression of not knowing or understanding personal awareness. They will not show a cognitive response to get one's points across to others with a clear understanding of the conversation at hand. They will not know how to respond because the drugs prevent them from knowing with a clear cognitive response. It does not help either when the medications cause a loss in ambition for yourself. It is sad that this deception and ideology has become the norm in our beliefs and our daily lives. And as you can see, I signed my document. And I did that on every single one of these. Every single one of the pages that I wrote you guys. These are all written by me. I have autism. I was previously misdiagnosed growing up as a kid. And for 23 years of my life, I was on these medications like lithium and Depakote and Abilify and Geodone and just a number of different medications. Thorazine when I was a young child. I started on Thorazine when I was a child. I was totally misdiagnosed growing up, even though they had the knowledge of autism since the 20s. They could have diagnosed me back then, but high-functioning autism was not it did not become relevant to a diagnosis until much later in the 90s. I was 13, 14 years old in the 90s. They could have placed me on Risperidol Constant, which I'm on now, which doesn't necessarily cause long-term impairment. The effect of it's only like 2 or 3 days, and then the sedation wears off. So the sedation is really what it is. It's lobotomizing the frontal lobe and preventing all these natural abilities from being apparent in the person. Ability to question and compare information to say, is this wrong or is this right? Should I do this? Should I not do this? You tend to listen to your emotion and how your body is responding to the things in your environment. So you're more emotional with your understanding as far as how you make decisions. And that's the problem, because there can be a lot of people out there that are in prison or that are being convicted of a crime, no matter what it is, that their cognitive abilities are impaired. So should they be found responsible for crimes that they commit when the medication really is causing the impairment and the lack in judgment? Should they be held responsible? No matter what they've done to another person, you have to question the effects of the chemicals, knowing that even marijuana can impair your driving, knowing that alcohol can impair your driving. Well, these medications are no different. They're a narcotic that keeps you addictive. It's an addictive chemical that alters a person's consciousness. It alters the person's ability to make good decisions. It's no different than marijuana, no different than alcohol, no different than any illegal drug, except for it's a legal chemical. And they keep coming up with all these new different medications trying to deceive you. Don't be deceived, people. Don't be deceived. You may think that these medications are benefiting you. You may think that marijuana is benefiting you in some way. You're more creative and all this other stuff. But long term, the suppression of the chemical is going to cause so many problems with your transmitters that you're not going to be creative anymore. It's going to start suppressing that creativity. And you're going to have all kinds of conflicts. Like, for instance, dementia. Dementia can be primarily related to these chemicals. They don't benefit in some way, they worsen. They keep a person confused so they don't focus on their fears. But the person can overcome if they allow themselves to believe the opposite of what their fears are telling them to believe. They can change all that. They can change the symptoms of dementia, of all these different emotions, depression, anxiety, fear, worry. You can change all those things. The brain can naturally, by you choosing to change what you believe. Don't fear. Choose not to fear. Choose to trust and believe in the alternative. Choose to trust and believe in yourself that you can ultimately achieve whatever you want to achieve without life circumstances getting in the way. Choose to believe the opposite, and the emotion changes. So this is Michael James Bigham, CEO, Living Faith Technologies. Or not Living Faith. I kind of changed my name. It's actually Caesar Neuro Technologies now. Not neuro as in neuro technology, but Nero. Caesar Neuro Technologies. You all have a wonderful day. Bye.